নমস্কাৰ বন্ধুসকল আজি মই লৈ আহিছোঁ আপোনালোকলৈ BA 6 সেমিষ্টাৰৰ ইংলিছ মেজৰৰ 603 পেপাৰ কেইখনমান প্ৰথমে আমি 2017 চনৰ পেপাৰখন চাওঁ তো এইটো কুৱেশ্যন নম্বৰ 1 আছে এনসাৰ এনি 8 অফ দ্য ফলোইং 1 মাৰ্কছৰ কাৰণে 8টা কৰিব লাগে কুৱেশ্যন নম্বৰ A আছে হু ৰোট এ ডাইং কলোনিয়েলিজম B in which book does Homi K. Bhabha use the concept hybridity? See which country is the playwright Ol Soyinka from? Next D is a colonialist criticism is extracted from which work of Achebe? Next is a who is the author of Prestar John? Next, name the first novel of Amitav Ghosh. Next, what was the name of Tridip's father? Next, which 2 awards did Amitav Ghosh win for his novel The Shadow Lines? Next, what is the full name of J.M. Coetzee? Next, what was the name of the escort service Lurie used? Next, who is the chair of Lurie's department? Next, in which part of South Africa does Lucy live? Next, answer any 4 of the following questions 4 into 4. Question number A is write a short note on the Gayatri Chakraborty Spivak's contribution to post-colonial criticism. B is what do you understand by the term Daijopara? C is give a brief account of Salman Rushdie's magic realism. D is write a brief note on Achebe's views on the Western notions of universality in literature. Next is critically assess Iris Andreski's accounts of the advantages of colonialism in Africa. Next is give a brief character sketch of Illa. Next, write briefly on the theme of partition in the shadow lines. Aisor discuss briefly the role of animals in Coetzee's disgrace. I prepare a brief note on the significance of the opera in disgrace. Z is present a brief character sketch of Petrus. Question number 3, answer the following questions. 4 into 4, this 14 into 4 equal 56. So, the number is 4 korbo lage. It is a decolonization does facilitated post-colonial literature that moved beyond the shores of England, which however remained English because of the medium used. Give an overview of the post-colonial literature of the decolonized countries. Or this write a detailed note on key post-colonial concepts like Orientalism, hybridity, subaltern, and marginality. Next, it is a beat. Discuss after Achebe the need for a powerful African voice to counter the colonialist notions of criticism. Or it is attempt a critical analysis of Chinua Achebe's essay Colonialist Criticism. C this consider Amitav Ghosh's novel The Shadow Lines as a memory novel. Or this justify the appropriateness of the title The Shadow Lines. Or how this critically evaluate the character of Tridip in The Shadow Lines. Next, D this discuss the various themes in Coetzee's novel Disgrace. Or D this Lucy is the most adorable character in the novel Disgrace, and yet she is the one to suffer most. Do you agree? Present a character sketch of Lucy. Next, this or Dilopini comment on Lurie's relations with different female characters. So, 2017 চনৰ পেপাৰখন এইখনে আছিলে ইয়াৰ পিছত আমি যাওঁ এবাৰ 2015 চনৰ পেপাৰখনলৈ তো প্ৰথম question number 1 say answer any 8 of the following as directed 1 into 8 এক নম্বৰৰ কাৰণে আছে A is who is the author of Black Skin White Masks. B is name the author of Empire, the British imperial experience from 1765 to the present. Next, C দিছে who has authored in other worlds essay in cultural politics. Next আছে which country is the poet A.D. Hope from. Next, name the book written by Iris Andreski which is critiqued by Chinua Achebe. Next আছে who is the author of the second round. Next আছে name another novel written by Koji other than Disgrace. Next আছে name the place where Suraya resided. Next আছে what was David Lurie's profession in Disgrace. Next আছে in which year was the Shadowlines published. Next is the Shadowlines is based on the real incident of death to fill in the blanks. Next is which award did Amitabh Ghosh win for his novel The Shadowlines. Next is who was Ila in the Shadowlines. Next question number 2 is answer any 4 of the following question. 4 into 4 equals 16 আছে ইয়াতে 4 নম্বৰ কাৰণে আছে ইয়াত আছে এটা write a short note either on racism or on diaspora. Next is discuss how the English language has been refashioned by the post-colonial writers. Next Ase discuss the emergence of the new English. See this what are Achebe's contentions against Anosi's dismissal of the role of the novelist as a teacher and poet's passion for truth. Next Ase critically assess Iris Andreski's account of the advantage of colonization in Africa. Next Ase who is Tridip and what is his role in the novel The Shadowlines. Next is attempt a brief character sketch of Thamwa in Shadowlines. Next is comment on Koche's use of the romantic English poet Byron as a symbol in disgrace. Next is attempt a brief character sketch of Melanie Isaacs in disgrace. Next is answer the following question 14 into 4. 14 নম্বৰকে 4টা কৰিব লাগে. Question number 1 of say define the term post-colonialism and explain the means of textual analysis involved in post-colonial reading of text. Next say Ordilo write a note on the key issues and concept of post-colonial literature and literary criticism. Or say what is the difference between imperialism and colonialism. Discuss the 3 periods of decolonization. Next, B is how does Chinua Achebe Celine's misguided colonialist criticism make a critical assessment of Achebe's post-colonial reading of the European notions of literary criticism. Or is let every people bring their gifts to the great festival of the world's cultural harvest and mankind will be all the richer for the variety and distinctiveness of the offerings. Examine Chinua Achebe's plea for a multicultural, inclusive and transformative post-colonial aesthetics in the light of the above comment. Next is critically evaluate the Shadowlines as a post-colonial novel. Next order is comment critically on the treatment use of history in the Shadowlines with reference to Amitabh Ghosh's notions of history. Or say Ghosh as a postmodernist writer is concerned more with globalization than nationalization. Discuss. Did this Disgrace is a highly disturbing novel because it seems to present a world dying without hope. Evaluate Koche's novel as a representations of the post-apartheid tensions in South Africa in the light of the above comment. Or is a critically comment on Koche's use of symbolism in Disgrace. Or is a analyze how Koche incorporates the theme of disgrace at various levels of the novel. So 2015 চনৰ পেপাৰ এখন এখনে আছিল. নেক্সট আমি আহোঁ এবাৰ 2016 চনৰ পেপাৰখনলৈ. Answer any 8 of the following. Question number 1 is name one post-colonial critic who hails from India. Next is who is the author of the book Mask of Conquest. Next is from which country is the writer Chinua Achebe. Next is when was Chinua Achebe's essay Colonialist Criticism published. Next, when was Amitav Ghosh's novel The Shadow Lines published? Next, who is the narrator of the novel The Shadow Lines? Next, name another novel written by Amitav Ghosh other than The Shadow Lines. Next, who is the author of Colonialism, Post-colonialism? Next, what was David Lurie's profession in the novel Disgrace? Next, when was the novel Disgrace published? Next, who is the narrator of the novel Disgrace? Next, name one novel in English written by Chinua Achebe. Next, answer any four of the following questions. 4 into 4 equals 16. Write a short note on migration. Next, examine how gender has been studied and discussed by post-colonial writers. Next, write a short note on the use of English language as a tool by post-colonial writers. Next, write a note on Chinua Achebe's opinion on the colonization in Africa. Next, how far do you think Chinua Achebe is successful in providing a critique of the universality of Western literature? Next, write a critical note on how Amitav Ghosh uses Calcutta, London, and Dhaka as location for the novel The Shadow Lines. Next, discuss how the narrator of The Shadow Lines was fascinated by Tridip. Next, write a short note on J.M. Coetzee's use of language in the novel Disgrace. Next, write a short note on the theme of racism as reflected in Disgrace. Next, answer the following questions. 14 into 4 equals 56. A said, do you understand the terms post-colonial and post-colonial in two different ways? Elaborate the assumptions related to these terms with reference to any one of the novels prescribed for you. Ordinarily write a critical note on the major issues and concept of post-colonial literature. Or what is decolonization? How do you think decolonization has affected the production of literature in the once colonized nations? Give reasons in support of your answer. Next, how far do you think Chinua Achebe's understanding of the colonialist criticism is justified? Examine critically with proper illustrations from the text. Or what was Chinua Achebe's plea to the African critics? Do you think a version of the African criticism will be more pertinent to understand African literature? Give reasons. Next question of the sheet. Write a critical note on the use of maps and mirrors in the shadow lines. Or how far do you think Amitav Ghosh's understanding of borders and boundaries as shadow lines is justified? Give reasons. Or write a critical note on migration as an issue of post-colonial writing as reflected in the shadow lines. Next, did critically examine Disgrace as a post-colonial novel? Or what are the different symbols used by Coetzee in Disgrace? How does his use of symbols offer an intense understanding of the theme of disgrace in the novel? Or write a critical note on the narrative technique of the novel Disgrace. তো 2016 চনৰ পেপাৰখন এইখন আছিলে। ইয়াৰ পিছত আমি আহিছোঁ 2018 পেপাৰখন। 2018 পেপাৰখন question number 1, answer any 8 of the following question 1 into 8. One আছে who adopted the term ambivalence into colonial discourse theory. Next আছে who made the word negritude famous. Next আছে name a country that used to be a settler colony. Next আছে what is the present name of Rhodesia. Next আছে what are raffia skirts. Next আছে name a famous novel written by Chinua Achebe. Next আছে where did David Lurie meet Soraya on Thursday. Next আছে who wrote the emergence of African fiction. Next আছে who was Honor Tracy. Next আছে who were the writers that Melanie Isaacs was interested in. Next আছে who is the narrator of the novel The Shadow Lines. Next আছে what did May Price feel when she saw the disfigured beggar in India. Next question number 2 say answer any 4 of the following questions. 4 into 4 equals 16. Write a short note on subaltern studies. Next say give a short account of Franz Fanon's contribution to the growth of post-colonial theory. Next say explain what Homi K. Bhabha meant by the term hybridity. Next say what is meant by colonialist criticism. Next say give a character sketch of Tridip. Next say what is the role of the English siblings Nick and Maypies in the novel The Shadow Lines. Elaborate. Next say assess the post-apartheid situation in South Africa from your reading of the text Disgrace. Next say attempt a brief sketch of the character of Lucy Lurie. Next say answer the following questions. 14 into 4 56. The fifth questions to address a nation and its literature is how does a nation speak about, represent itself to its own people and to the world. Examine how post-colonial writers treat the issues of nation and nationality in their writings. Or say examine how race as a marker of identity played a crucial role in the growth of post-colonial theory with special reference to African black consciousness. Next say examine how Chinua Achebe reacts to the hostile reception of his first novel by the colonialist critics through his essay Colonialist Criticism. Or say examine the essay Colonialist Criticism as an example of post-colonial critique of colonialist discourse. Next, he said consider the Shadow Lines as a fiction that critiques the post-colonial